through in 1994. Myth making at the expense of the youth has become a national pastime. Everyone will have us believe that those born when Madiba was released are born free, are the born free generation. These born free comrades who supposedly have no memory or inkling of apartheid colonialism. I want to debunk this myth, which is ahistorical and actually nonsensical. The concept is ideologically fraudulent. The concept of born frees, in our view, is littered with inconsistencies. It essentially suggests that the struggle ended in 1994, whereas we know that the struggle continues. Just as the millions who still don't have jobs, as the millions who still live in apartheid and spatial planning, spending the bulk of their mega wages on transport and food, who can't get loans to pilot startups, no matter how good their ideas are, just as the young graduates who still struggle to get into the corporate world, never mind the ladder that they have to climb. And for all of us who battle every day to make a living, for us, the struggle did not end in 1994. For us, it is a luta continua. We will only be born free, comrades, if the hospitals we are born in have facilities of the same but better quality. If the crèches and preschools we go to have the same but better quality. If the quality of the education that we get have the same but better quality, with libraries, computer labs, and science labs, if COSAs have their ways, if every school child has an iPad, I hear, yes, then we will be born free. If we all have equal chances of graduating at grade 12 with better quality skills and equal access to further education and training, Comrade Pillay and Malik, I can see you are fiddling with my iPad there. If we have equal opportunities for work and employment and our qualifications are of a better quality, if we are all born into families who can bequeath inheritances of land and pensions and life covers, then we will be all born free. The truth, comrades, is that not all of us are at the same starting line. Those who fail to see how the past inequalities fester into the present and will, unless addressed, explode into the future are willfully blind. Put differently, they do not want to see the reality which we live into. The born frees will exist if we live under socialism and we fully achieve the transition to socialism. Then we will be regarded for the first time as free. That's when the born-free society will emerge under a socialist future, and that's what we're all struggling for. If it is demanded of us to forgo our parents' memory and the visible scars of apartheid, is it not time we also ask those who demand from us to forget that they forgo their inheritances, which were in most cases ill-gotten gains from a system that sought to deliberately advance them through disadvantaging others. You know, Comrade General Secretary, since Kaiser Chiefs won the league last year, it is very difficult. It is very difficult to find supporters of the other team. And it is also very difficult to find people who go out there and say, we benefited from apartheid, we supported apartheid. That's how difficult it is. It is very difficult to find out people who are beneficiaries of the apartheid system who inherit benefits from ill-gotten gains from their parents, who today want to say to us that they had nothing to do with the apartheid system. We are demanded of to forget that there was apartheid. And I think that it is important, particularly as communists, because one of the greatest advantages that we have as communists is that we are also historical materialists. And we believe that that which happens now is part of a chain reaction of what happened historically, and that it will determine the future. And that if I should forget that my mother was exploited for 20 years in a supermarket, earning less than 3,000 rands, and that has put me in a disadvantage compared to a child whose parents earned thousands of rands under the apartheid system, who had learned to their advantage, who had skills which I could never be exposed to, whose schools were better equipped. If I am supposed to forget the disadvantages which our parents were exposed to, and today I must be told by the DA that I must forget apartheid, that will never happen. That which happened to my parents is a chain reaction of what is happening to me, and that which will happen to my children and their children. So it is very important, comrades, that we remind society in general that it may be easy to forgive those who were the champions, who were the architects, but also those who benefited from the apartheid system. But it is not easy to forget, because that which was designed by apartheid still live with us today. We must say, comrades, that our struggle is the struggle for socialism, not declared through populism, but through a youth-led and youth-championed socialism. We have nothing to hide behind our cloaks, we must say. We have no crimes committed against the people or their governments, whether it's tax-related or any other crime. We have no crimes, no pursuance of capitalist greed, decadence, and opulence, whilst we hoodwink our people and our youth into exotic ideas of revolution. Whilst we know that we use them as cannon fodder in our defense for the crimes we committed against their state and ultimately against them. The battle, comrades, the fight, is no longer only against the capitalist class, but also against those who want to delay the socialist revolution in the name of bringing it forth recklessly, sporadically, and spontaneously without any legitimate political program. We must use the same energy to unmask these hoodwinkers, these social and political scumbags. We must fight against the creeping culture of Iskotani as the emptiest youth culture and expose it for what it is, a dangerous diversion, and especially of township teenagers. We must declare war, comrades, of those who want to declare Iskotani a way of culture of our youth. We must declare war. We must declare war against those who think that they will create our own hard-fought democracy into a sushi republic. We must declare war against those who ideologically think that their major preoccupation is the abuse of women, is the abuse of state and state institutions, is the abuse of the political platform accorded legitimately and genuinely by our organization, that they use that as their own personal fiefdoms, and that once ejected, they think that they can parade somewhere else into their own organization. That's the war, comrades. That's the energy we need to invest, both against the capitalist scoundrels and also against those who woodwink, particularly young people, into believing that the struggle for socialism will be much easier. Those who are forming political organizations because of their unemployment. Just imagine if the youth were unemployed, who are dispossessed, who are exploited, whose properties have been dispossessed because of the crimes they've committed against the state. If those young people can form political parties, what will happen today? That's the war in which we need to wage, comrades. The basic tenets of the party program, in our view, comrades, lies in the advancement of the national democratic revolution. As the party declared in its program, the South African road to socialism remains the shortest route towards socialism. The main objective of the NDR is the building of a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous society, and the liberation of blacks and Africans from economic and political bondage. Since 1994, there has been various challenges in the construction of a democratic and prosperous society and the building of a nation. These tasks, in our view, comrades, of the NDR have been confronted mainly due to the nature of our transition, negotiated and all of that by various also internal and external threats. As things stand, there has been effective transformation in legislative, judicial, and senior executive arms of the state, but the economy, the land, finance, energy, and minerals are still and predominantly controlled by white monopoly capital. The stranglehold on these sectors of power has resulted in patchy transformation or the absence thereof. And although the last 19 years has been growing, has experienced growing black middle strata and black petty bourgeois, change in the economic patterns of ownership and control is still far from adequate. It is time that we seek radical but organized solutions to the problems confronting our society. The policy conference of the ANC, the party congress, the Congress of COSATU have been instrumental in taking forward some of the radical proposals which we've been making. In fact, since the 2005 policy conference of the Young Communist League, those who have been around, Comrade Joyce and others, Comrade Lolo, the older ones, would remember these specific and very radical ones, proposals which we've made, and Comrade Alex being no exception. The greatest trick, comrades, pulled by monopoly capital was to convince our people in its hegemony and control of ideas that the misery of our people lies wholly in government failure to deliver basic services. Monopoly capital has completely absolved itself from the reproduction of systemic poverty, unemployment, and inequality, and has thrown into the arena of political, and has thrown this problem or challenge into the arena of political contest. The major and strategic enemy of the National Democratic Revolution, as we argued in the party congress and everywhere else, is white monopoly capital. It will not matter who holds the fort in the union buildings or in parliament. The real class struggle is with the monopoly capital, and mainly in the mining, energy, agriculture, construction, manufacturing, and finance. That's where the problem lies. And that's the problem which we need to challenge. The logic in the consistent message that appears in both local and international media, consumed by our people on a daily basis, is that if 14,000 people are retrenched by Anglo-American or by Goldfields, government is to blame. If mine workers in Lonmin demands a basic wage that is qualitative and go out on a strike for 2 or 3 weeks, government is to blame. If there are problems around service delivery anywhere in the country, if the struggle for economic equality and economic justice in our country is taken back even before the period of racialism in South Africa, that government is to blame, that everything else has got the footprint of government blame instead of the role that monopoly capital has played in the racialization of our economy, in the reversing of the gains of the National Democratic Revolution. And obviously the list is endless. And that it is a reflection of the dictatorship in the factory floor, and that the people, solely because they elect parliament and government, do not see anybody else that they should blame. And that they can only hold accountable those that they elect. And that it may be referred to as stretching the notion of democracy too far. But our role as young communists, working in particular with the youth formations of the trade union movement, should be to stretch this notion of democracy and talk about democracy in the workplace, and talk about why should it be that it is people who have no idea what it feels like to be underground in the mine who determines how much a mine worker should be paid, who determines how many tons of gold or platinum should be produced, who determines where that gold and platinum should go after it has been produced, who are the ones who earn from the profits of or proceeds from that mining. That people are wrongly referred to as miners. The CEO of Lonmin is referred to as a miner when he actually does not mine anything. And the miners are the people who go underground. The owners of farms in the Dorans are referred to as farmers when they actually farm nothing at all. The people who work and ensure that this economy works, who ensure that this country remains stable, gets no recognition at all. And those are the people, comrades, who democracy should work for. Those are the people who should actively participate in ensuring that, or in deciding how many tons of gold or platinum is produced, how many grams of grapes are produced, how much acre of land must be tilled, and how much food needs to be produced for our economy to operate. And those are the people who are mostly exploited. Those are the people who do not see the value of this democracy. Those are the people who are the most vulnerable to the insults hurled at Mandela by people who say, and not only him, but by people who say that that generation of leaders actually sold us out because they do not see the value of this democracy. And that if democracy does not work in the workplace, then there is no democracy at all. And that's the democracy which we collectively need to go all out and fight for. That's our duty, that's our responsibility. But part of the things, comrades, which we've been speaking about, which we think must be, as the National Committee, the 5 things which this National Council must look at and discuss in the commissions and everywhere else, and we concretely enrich these 5 proposals, are as follows. 1, on the land question, that there be an acceleration of the proposals in the Green Paper on land and restitution into law, and that since we all agree now, 5 or 6 years later, after the SACP has said this needs to happen, that we now all agreeing that we need to do away with the willing buyer, willing seller model of land restitution. That the processes of the land claims court and all of that, that we need to accelerate that, and the whole issue of the expropriation of land for use in restitution on or for public good. that the implementation of some of the proposals on the green paper should and will lead to drastic acceleration of land claims, and that this will give effect to some of the proposal in the RDP document and also in the Freedom Charter. Over and above, comrades, all of this, there must be drastic policies on foreign land ownership, land use, and an imposed quota of land allocation, support for both sustainable and agricultural land use, and also heavy taxes on land use for other purposes other than human settlement or food production. We should support the call by the SACP for the convening of the Land Summit 2, and consequently, in our view, there has to be a national food summit, food security summit. And ultimately, land as a natural resource must be socialized and its private ownership must be abolished. The second issue which we think we need to look at is the energy question, and that drastic changes in the production and consumption of energy, especially electricity, must be put into place. The available use of clean and safe energy afforded to us by development in technology is yet to be fully exploited. South Africa is one of the countries that have the potential to develop nuclear energy and shale gas for achieving its development and energy needs. This will obviously, in our view, cause less harm to the environment, break the dependence on Eskom on coal, and therefore the destruction of our environment, and provide cheaper electricity and thus alleviate the currently imposed burden on the consumer of electricity costs. And we iterate there the renationalization of Sasol as one of the key demands, as we believe that the whole issue of the taxes that are imposed on Sasol are not really beneficial to our economy. The third thing, comrades, which we're proposing for critical discussion at this National Council is that although there has been growth in the financial sector in our country and various other changes which resulted in the transformation of the banking sector, the monopoly is still held by 6 major banks. In all the demands that the SACP has placed before the government and the private sector on the transformation of the financial sector, we think that there is one major demand that we need to continue and champion, which is the creation of a state bank. The state already provides for various financial services, and even these use existing patterns as practiced in the mainstream banking systems. Many of the banks that are dominant in these sectors also spread their tentacles into the mining, energy, construction, manufacturing, telecommunication, and agricultural sectors. State development will always be undermined by monopoly finance capital, and therefore procrastination in the consolidation of all state finance institutions into a state bank will further delay and continue to derail the tasks of the national democratic revolution. In many instances, comrades, black economic empowerment is reversed to apartheid patterns of ownership through failure by BEE partners to meet their obligations for equity, whilst others surrender their equities for a quick buck in pursuance of a lavish lifestyle. And we do not mince our words when we say that calls for nationalization, for instance, of mines had nothing to do with the transformation of the mining sector, but had everything to do with the pursuance of lavish lifestyles and the desire for a quick buck of certain beneficiaries within the mining sector who absolutely had nothing to do with mining. In the worst of cases, even RDP houses are repossessed by banks as they are used as collateral in the desperate attempt by their owners to borrow from the banks loans they are unable to pay. There must, comrades, be no delay in the pressure that needs to be exerted for the creation of a state-owned bank. South Africa remains, comrades, one of the most endowed in mineral resources. And our platinum production last year, in 2010, amounted to about 75%. But we still own, as a country, 61% of vermiculite and all those other chromium, ferrochromium, palladium, and all those other minerals. There's a big hole which we got here in Kimberley as a gift from De Beers. They felt that we do not deserve that which was under the hole. So they left a very nice big hole, which I was asking one of the waiters at the Big Hole Protea Hotel as to what's the fuss about this hole, and he was saying, unfortunately, our forefathers are no longer here. You should be asking them and not me. So there's that big hole. But even with that big hole, that South Africa is still rich with mineral resources. And that the Chamber of Mines and the Minerals Department reports that that mining accounts for almost 8.6% of our GDP in 2010, and that figure has actually remained consistent over the last 2 or 3 years. And that even though the mining charter, comrade, says that ownership in the mining sector is still predominantly private and also foreign, and that charter also insists on specific changes that needs to be made in terms of the ownership patterns and control of the mining sector. That even though that is the case, we think that we need to be advocating for much more radical demands in relation to the mining sector. And that part of our discussions should be oriented towards a solution that guarantees greater ownership and participation by those who work the mines, and that interventions should be to support for an increased minimum wage in the mining sector. We actually do not understand why, when the NUM demands an increase in the entry wages of mine workers, that we're told that it has inflationary implications, that it will plunge our economy into a crisis. But when mining bosses declare profits and dividends to themselves as individuals, which are 1,000 times more than the wage of an ordinary mine worker, that nothing is said about that. That South Africa, as we speak today, in the broader sense, your chief executives in the private sector are the most paid, even if you calculate their wages in dollar terms, that they are the highest paid. But yet, that is not a cause for concern or inflationary concern. But when workers say, we demand this much for us to remain alive and for us to come to work and be exploited by you, this is how much we want, we're told that has got inflationary implications, that will plunge the economy into a crisis, and that our demand, our first and major resolution in relation to the mining sector, comrades, is to support the NUM and is to support the demands made by members of the NUM in terms of the improvement of the quality of wages of mine workers. But secondly, that there should be support in terms of specific targets in relation to the operations and advantages of the minerals that we have. There's a state mining company that has been established, and that state mining company must have the rights to explore and mine all the mining assets and minerals that our country is endowed with. We must also campaign, comrades, and we're presenting this for discussion, for the legislation that compels mining companies to allocate 50% of their profits, ownership and control to the workers who are the actual miners of these industries. We think, comrades, that it is not justifiable for mines to go around, look for people like Kenny Kunene and give them shares in mining, in their mining adventures, and those people go and open nightclubs and use naked women as plates, when the actual miners do not and cannot have that quality of lives. We're not saying that workers must use this share of 50% of the profits of the mines, to go and get women into plates for sushi. But we think that, there has really, workers in the mining sector in particular has to have real share in relation to the profits that are made, instead of people who have got nothing to do with mining. And that the same needs to, at some point, apply to the rest of the other people in the mining sector. In the other sectors of the economy. And we think that we really need to look into and have a discussion and engagement about this in particular. We have always said, comrades, that state capitalism, nationalization, and all of those things, in our view, in the immediate, are not the solutions in resolving the question of ownership and control. And in fact, that beyond the whole question of nationalization, policies generally of the movement are not necessarily advocating for state ownership or national ownership, but that they are advocating, for instance, in terms of land, those who own the land, in terms of mining, those who mine these mineral resources, that they must have ownership of these particular mineral resources. And we think that for us to advocate for all of these things, part of the things is to say that those who work the mines, those who work the land, and those who work in the different sectors of the economy need to have a significant ownership of the profits that are generated from this project in any way. In some companies, 100% of the profits do not go into our own economy, but they are declared in the London Stock Exchange, in the New York Stock Exchange, and everywhere else, and are used to develop Western and North American economies, instead of being used for the development of our economy. We applaud, comrades, the 19 strategic infrastructure projects which government have been leading, and we think that politically they represent a shift in relation to the neoliberal policies and remedies which were applied for some 10 to 15 years of our democratic dispensation, and that we have significantly shifted or moved from government policies and remedies which was prescribed by the IMF and the World Bank, that of the state cutting cut on social expenditure, and moving more towards a state budgetary surplus, into a state that actively gets involved into the economy. And we think that we need to encourage and support that, because we believe that it is an important instrument of ensuring that our economy works, that we have government playing a significant role in creating employment and so forth, and that all of this, in our view, represents the transformation of our society in its entirety, and also in tilting the balance of power and relations in the in the economy. Next year, comrades, in April or May, we will be required to participate in the general elections. There are more than 30 million voters on the voters' roll, and that there's more than 8 million young people who are eligible to vote next year. And as usual, just as is the case in the previous elections, there are new political parties which seek to ride on the death of old and dying parties, and each of them declaring their undying love for the working class and the poor. For us, comrades, undoubtedly the ANC in the context of the alliance remains the only political choice for the people of our country in advancing and building the building of a national democratic society. With each elections, there will always be opportunistic questions about the SACP and also whether it will be standing for elections or not and whether it has sold its ideals. We remain resolute, comrades, as the YCL, that the party should consistently ask the question in discussion of its South African road to socialism, whether and when is the appropriate time for it to independently stand for elections. We raise this question with the full knowledge and understanding that the SACP is in alliance with the ANC and that members of the SACP will in their own right be appointed by the President on merit to be in the executive. In all of this, the project of building the SACP as an independent force of the working class with its unique structures and voice remains. And we must say that that particular project, that there's not been no derail in relation to that particular project. The party will remain, both in words and deeds, the truest political representative of the working class and the poor. And for as long as the project of a national democratic society remains the shortest route towards socialism, and the ANC remains committed towards building such a society, the relevance of the alliance can never be questioned. The foundation of this alliance are clearly captured in the Communist Manifesto by Marx and Engels, who briefly said that we do not form separate political parties opposed to the other working class parties. Very important. And that we have no interest as communists, separate and apart from those of the proletariat as a whole. And that we do not set up any sectarian principles of our own, and that by whatever shape and mold the proletarian movement. And that as communists we fight for the attainment of the immediate aim of the working class and the enforcement of their momentary interests. And that in the movement of the present, as communists, we also represent and take care of the future of that movement. That, comrades, is very critical. And that in short, as communists everywhere, we support every revolutionary movement against the existing social and political order of things. That's our duty as communists. These make up of the foundation upon which the Communist Party in South Africa, in the context of the world communist movement, has been shaped. The alliance between the SACP and the ANC represents an up-to-date elaboration, both in theory and practice, of those sections of the Communist Manifesto. It is in this context, comrades, that we will be fighting the elections next year with the ANC in the forefront organizationally. Not only as an ally, but our own movement as a communist in our own right as ANC members. We don't want to change biology based on the weather, that today our blood is black, green, and gold, and then tomorrow our blood is berets. That's not how we work, comrades. And as we say, that's not how we roll. You know, we're still rolling in the same way in the forthcoming general elections. And that we have been proven by the discourse of events
that those who were leading the ANC Youth League, comrades, after the Youth League's Gallagher Estate Congress, were not the league of the ANC. And that they were a faction within the ANC pursuing foreign, if not personal interest, or a combination of both. And we've consistently never wavered from that. And that they were running the ANC Youth League not as an integral part of the ANC, but as another organization. And that's why it has led to collapse of many things, including the collapse of the Progressive Youth Alliance. And that their media-sponsored popularity made them to believe that they are a different chapter of the ANC, and that they are not actually its youth wing. And that the EFF has alleged that, as we know, that there are those within the ANC structures in COSATU and some of its affiliates in government who are waiting for the right time to move towards this new political party. We actually know who these people are. We actually know those people who are waiting for the right time to move towards this picnic. And that with time, they will obviously be exposing themselves. And that in words, they have said so much that they actually belong there. And that their holding of the membership, either of the SACP or of the ANC or of COSATU or of its affiliate, is meant to see what happens that side. You know, my former friend Julius says he was used as a condom at some point, but unfortunately it's happening again. That people are saying, go and see what happens with this EFF thing, and then if things goes well, we may come and join you. But if not, some of them have an insurance of still belonging to our organizations. And we must begin to expose some of them who are hiding under the shelter and cover of our organizations, but yet their hearts belong somewhere else. We know them and we are going to shame them. There are people, Comrade General Secretary of the party, who say that if we act against certain individuals, either in the SACP or in COSATU or in the ANC or any of the affiliated structures, then there will be chaos. That there are supermen and superwomen in our organizations. We must remind them that there are people like William Adisha who left, and when they left, they did not even leave with their children and their wives and whatever else they had other than their wives. They only left with their jackets to cope. And that it will happen to some of the people who think that if they leave the alliance and the alliance structures, that they think they will live with everybody else. That theory does not apply in reality. It can happen in your dream. You know, when you dream, you control what happens in your dream. But in reality, it does not apply. In your dream, you can see yourself leading millions of people into some new political formation of Kenny Kunene and the rest of them. But in reality, it does not work in that way. And that with time, we're going to be exposing some of these individuals. And that as usual, the media has already pronounced that we are going to be having an official opposition. And that's the same thing that happened when COPE was formed. That here we have an alternative. That here our people have a choice. And the same story is repeating itself, not 15 or 20 years later, but only 5 years later, that we're getting the same message over and over and over again. And that the media has actually swallowed the propaganda of this EFF, hook, line, and sinker, and that it has now become their own gospel. But that all of this, in our view, are baseless, and that we should not lie to ourselves also either, comrades. That
Yes, there's been progress that has been made. Yes, that the ANC is guaranteed a landslide. But more importantly, that the commitment of the ANC-led government, for instance, in relation to corruption on the one hand, but generally in terms of improving and changing the quality of lives of our own people. We think that that is very critical. Yes, when we go out there as part of the elections campaign, we will be told by people who are in their very nice RDP houses, paved or tarred roads, running water and electricity, with their children attending preschool or primary school, some of their teenagers going to university, thanks to the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. The older ones will be getting child support grants or the pension funds and all of that. Will be told by those very same people that the ANC has done nothing. And we need to go out and engage with those communities. That's our responsibility. We must say, comrades, that within the youth movement ourselves, we're not the better off. And that with the changes in the ANC Youth League, for instance, we're not the better off. But collectively, as the YCL, as SASCO, as COSAS, as the ANC Youth League, we hold in our shoulders the responsibility of ensuring that the ANC is elected in this fifth election with a landslide majority. That's our responsibility. We hold that responsibility, in particular as young communists. We think that we need to leave this Congress with that mandate and also with that understanding that our role and our view will be to ensure that we return the ANC into government, the ANC-led alliance into government with a landslide victory and a landslide majority. We must forget about all the other problems, all the other issues. We must mainly focus in ensuring that the ANC is returned. But as we do that, we will have to be frank, comrades, that all has not necessarily been rosy. And I think in relation in particular to addressing the needs, interests, and challenges that we find ourselves in our communities, the problem of the bucket system is not only a Cape Town problem. It is only that the comrades of the Youth League have found a stinking way to address that issue in Cape Town. But it is a general problem. Yesterday, the public protector, or a day before, the public protector was making a finding in relation to one of the municipalities in the Free State, for instance, where 70 million rands went into someone else's pocket instead of going into the sanitation of those communities. And those are some of the realities that we'll have to confront with. And that we need not mask those weaknesses. We need not claim easy victories. And that we need to tell the truth that the 19 years have not been without problems. But that the solution does not lie into either the Democratic Alliance or any other of the political parties, but that the solution remains into putting our faith within the ANC. Everywhere, comrades, everywhere, particularly within the continent where the revolutionary organizations against colonialism have governed. The 20-year cycle where people begin to ask difficult questions is the same situation that we're faced with. That we need to confront those questions. And we need to be frank in responding to those questions. And we need to be clear in our responses to those questions. And in response, we need to say
that yes, there are problems, but that our commitment lies within the alliance in ensuring that all of these challenges are actually resolved. The global economic crisis, comrades, have put young people in the worst economic conditions since the late 1920s. Levels of unemployment amongst young people globally have reached unprecedented proportions, with economies in the Eurozone recording the highest levels due to the double-dipping effect of the capitalist crisis. Even stable economies such as Germany have resorted to discontinue free education in universities. This is part of the Euro policies, obviously, in introducing austerity measures and in order to stabilize the economy in that region, which has had a ripple effect all over the world as many Euro economies began to tighten their borders to ensure compliance with tariffs and immigration laws. The challenge, even in the developing world, is to ensure that young people are adequately conscientized and have the scientific analysis to properly understand their role within the realm of the unfolding class struggle. This National Council should lay the basis for our contribution into the World Federation of Democratic Youth Festival and the proper place that the YCL need to play in that structure. But part of the key proposal which we presenting to this council is for the YCL to convene a youth chapter of ALNEF, the coordination of youth movements in the continent and in the world, to discuss the common challenges, needs, interests, aspirations, and programs that young people face all over the world. There are, therefore, concurrent challenges in this regard that relates to our theory and program around the key pillars of WOFD, such as anti-imperialism, anti-capitalism, and anti-monopoly, which we think we need to take forward to the WOFD festival, which is taking place in Ecuador. Our leadership, comrades, of the Obama campaign recently was significant in exposing the visit of the US to our continent, whilst its foreign policy has actually got worse under Barack Obama. And that those are some of the problems and issues which we highlighted during the Obama visit. We think, comrades, that the leadership of South Africa to both SADC and the continent is critical in fostering and advancing democracy, unity, collective development, and solidarity. We have to ensure that we intensify our work in the region and the world, and although the organizational report will extensively reflect on what has been done and what needs to be done, we think that our participation, together with the SACP, in solidarity movements on Palestine, Western Sahara, Swaziland, Zimbabwe, and many others, have actually been significant, and that we need to continue with all of that. And also our programmatic work with the youth in Botswana, in Lesotho, in Namibia, Angola, and in all those other countries. In conclusion, comrades, the coming 18 months before the 4th National Congress will be the busiest for the YCL. It is a time where we have to fix our eyes and energies on the issues of the day. It is also a time where many of us who are very old comrades will be handing over our membership of the YCL. We think that it's time now. We can't be keeping we can't be occupying the same space with other people who are younger than us in the Young Communist League. Yeah. Okay. There are challenges, comrades, of contributing to youth employment, poverty eradication, closing the inequality gap, ensuring that government provides quality health care through a national health insurance, radically transforming the economy to ensure common ownership and control, and building a non-racial, non-sexist, and democratic society.
We're confronted with the 5th National General elections in which young people will be the deciding vote that could prove to be the game changer. We cannot, comrades, overcome this hurdle and guarantee an overwhelming victory for the ANC if we tell lies, mask weaknesses, and claim easy victories. The road to freedom is at its toughest curve. So yes, we will be blunt about the need for radical change and frank about our mistakes. But we dare not forget the successes that we have attained over the last 19 years. As much as we should be critical of the weaknesses, and just as the General Secretary of the SACP always reminds us, we should also take responsibilities, collective responsibility, for the failures and successes of our revolution. But of critical importance, comrades, people are given water, people are crying, doctor. But of critical importance, comrades, is the reality that we cannot make good on the issues we have identified, such as land, mining, energy, the financial sector, transformational government spending, if we have weak structures or cadres who are not committed. The YCL branch is key, comrades. It has to be built from the ground up as the basic unit of our organization. Every member must be turned into an activist, and every activist must be turned into a cadre. Our fight for ideological hegemony cannot be imposed. It has to be earned. And the only way to earn it is through mass campaigns and the battle for ideas on external platforms as well as our internal media. You, as the delegates, also have a duty to champion local youth alliances and youth clubs as part of the growing influence that we need to have. This year in December, we will be celebrating the 10th anniversary of the re-establishment of the YCL. Anniversaries are important platforms, comrades, to reflect on the history of an organization, the strides it has made, and the strength garnered. But it is also an important opportunity to evaluate and acknowledge weaknesses and setbacks that were suffered. We will take stock of the road that was traveled, even before the re-establishment of the YCL. The thousands of cadres of the YCL who brought an idea to life, and the thousands who remain actively involved in their small or big way to keep this organization alive. All of them deserve our praise and also our support. You who are here, comrades, keeping the torch burning and having picked up the spear of Comrade Ngosi Pendule Kolisile amongst many others who have left us, should be proud of yourself. When the YCL was re-established, many questioned whether we will succeed. Others predicted our speedy demise. Others mocked the vision of the SACP and its intention of re-establishing its youth wing. And yet, here we are, strong, determined, willing and able to rise to the cause of young people. This has been no easy road, comrades. Starting an organization can never be an easy road, but yet it is a task many fulfilled with excitement, commitment, dedication that far surpass the organizations that has been around for even much longer. Whether out of love or out of hate, comrades, the name of this organization, the YCL, Ufa Simba, is in the lips and minds of many South Africans, and we must drink to that. Thank you very much.